Today we're going to delve into one of the scariest real-life mysteries. 7 horror stories involving people who disappeared and never returned. Get ready to hear chilling accounts of unexplained disappearances, cases that challenged the police and families, and situations in which the silence and emptiness left behind are as frightening as any horror movie. We're going to explore stories full of suspense and tension, showing that sometimes the real fear lies in the unknown and in the questions that are never answered. So, settle in, check if everyone is around, and let's begin this spine-chilling journey. Oh, and before anyone disappears, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and leave a like. This helps the channel a lot and ensures that you don't miss any scary content like this. Let's go. 1. The Last Train. London, November 2022. It was a cold, damp evening, typical of an English autumn. Daniel Evans, a 21-year-old university student, left a pub in Camden Town shortly before midnight, still laughing at his friends' jokes and feeling the heat of the alcohol mixed with the fatigue of a week of exams. His goal was simple: to catch the last train on the Northern Line and get home to Finchley, a residential neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. He didn't know that this seemingly banal journey would be his last. Daniel entered King's Cross Station at 11:45 p.m. when the traffic had already died down. The atmosphere was one of silent haste. Few passengers, employees collecting trash, artificial lights reflecting in puddles of water on the floor. He boarded the penultimate carriage, sitting near the door, distracted by his cell phone and the headphones hanging around his neck. As he answered messages, he noticed a middle-aged man, unshaven and wearing a dark coat, boarding at the same door and sitting a few rows back. The stranger's gaze was fixed, intense, but Daniel looked away, attributing the discomfort to his own fatigue. The stations passed quickly, and the carriage became increasingly empty. Daniel realized that after Euston, it was just him and the stranger. The silence was broken only by the metallic noise of the train on the tracks and the occasional announcement from the public address system. At Camden Town, the stranger stood up, walked slowly down the carriage aisle, and stopped near the automatic door, watching Daniel through the reflection in the glass. The student felt his heart race, but tried to convince himself that it was just paranoia. The train made a long, unexpected stop in a dark section of tunnel. The lights flickered, and Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. The stranger kept his eyes on him. When they finally reached Finchley Station after midnight, Daniel hurriedly got off, glancing discreetly behind him. The stranger got off too, keeping a measured distance, always in the shadows. The station was nearly deserted. Security cameras captured Daniel crossing the platform, his hurried footsteps echoing on the concrete floor. The stranger followed, staying a few feet away, avoiding the illuminated areas. Daniel tried to call a friend, but his cell phone had no signal. He left the station and turned onto a side street, where the streetlights cast unsettling shadows. The stranger remained behind, closer now, his face partially hidden by his hood. The last image of Daniel was captured by a convenience store security camera, showing him turning the corner, closely followed by the man in the dark coat. After that, there was no further footage. Daniel never arrived home that night. His family noticed he was missing the next morning and called the police. The search began immediately, with teams canvassing the area, interviewing friends and taxi drivers, and reviewing hours of security footage. Daniel's backpack was found in an alley a few blocks from the station, with all his belongings inside except his cell phone, which was never located. Witnesses reported hearing muffled screams around 1 a.m., but no one saw the attacker. Footprints in the mud indicated that someone had dragged Daniel down a side path that led to a set of abandoned warehouses. Police found signs of a struggle, blood stains, and hairs consistent with Daniel's profile, but no other remains. The case was highlighted in newspapers and on TV news. The police released images of the stranger, but no one recognized him. The man seemed to know how to avoid the cameras, always keeping his face partially hidden. The investigation revealed that 2 other young men had disappeared in similar circumstances in the previous months, each after catching the last train and being followed by a stranger. The pattern was clear: lone victims, quiet times, poorly lit areas, and no witnesses. Daniel's family organized campaigns, put up posters throughout the city, and appeared on TV programs to gather information. The case became a symbol of urban fear and the vulnerability of those who depend on public transportation during off-peak hours. Reports of people being followed by strangers at stations increased, and groups of volunteers began to accompany passengers on nighttime commutes. Police beefed up security at stations, installed more cameras, and stepped up patrols, but the stranger was never identified. New leads emerged occasionally. Reports of a man in a dark coat prowling stations, witnesses who said they had seen someone similar on other subway lines, but nothing concrete. The case went cold, but it was never closed. The impact of Daniel's disappearance was profound. The university where he studied held vigils and awareness-raising events, warning about the risks of nighttime transportation. Friends and family members created support groups for other families of missing people. Daniel's story has been the subject of documentaries, podcasts, and investigative reports, always highlighting the feeling of insecurity that permeates big cities. For many, the last train has become a grim warning about the unseen dangers that lurk in big cities, and how, on an ordinary night, a simple commute home can turn into a never-ending nightmare. The case remains open, with the hope that one day the truth will come out, but for the Evans family, each night is marked by absence, silence, and the agonizing wait for answers. 2. The Night Walk. Manchester, England, February 2024. It was a cold, damp night, typical of a British winter. Rachel Turner, 34, left home shortly after 8 p.m. for her evening walk, a habit she had cultivated since moving to the Chorlton neighborhood. She was wearing sportswear, headphones, and carried only her cell phone in her pocket. Known for being reserved, Rachel liked to walk the quiet streets of the neighborhood, taking advantage of the silence and time alone to collect her thoughts. Little did she know that would be the last night she would be seen by anyone. The neighbor across the street, Mrs. Jenkins, was the last to see her. Rachel waved before turning the corner, disappearing into the shadows of the tree-lined streets. It was a safe area with terraced houses, well-kept gardens, and few police incidents. But tonight, something was different. A chilly wind blew along the sidewalks, and the streetlights flickered, casting unsettling shadows on walls and gates. When Rachel didn't return home by 10 p.m., her boyfriend, Tom, became suspicious. He texted and called, but got no answer. At midnight, he called the police, who immediately began a search. Neighbors were awakened by sirens, flashlights, and questions. No one had heard screams. No one had seen anything out of the ordinary. Only Mrs. Jenkins remembered a black car parked on the corner, with its headlights off, shortly after Rachel left. She couldn't say what model it was, but she said she'd never seen it before. In the days that followed, police scoured the neighborhood. Sniffer dogs scoured trails and parks and gardens, drones flew overhead, and volunteers distributed posters with Rachel's photo. The case was featured in local newspapers, fueling fear and paranoia. The once quiet neighborhood became a place of suspicious looks and locked doors before nightfall. The security cameras of neighboring houses were analyzed. In one of them, installed in the house next door, Rachel is seen walking along the sidewalk, looking at her cell phone. Seconds later, a black car appears in the background, moves slowly, stops for a few moments, and then continues on. In another recording, captured by a doorbell camera, a shadow can be seen moving quickly behind a fence shortly after Rachel passes by. The images, however, are inconclusive. They do not show any aggression, nor do they capture faces or license plates. Police interviewed dozens of residents. Some reported seeing the same black car circling the neighborhood in the days leading up to the disappearance. Others recalled an unknown man in a hoodie standing in front of an empty house. One resident said she heard hurried footsteps and the sound of a car, doors slamming loudly around 8:30 p.m., but dismissed them at the time. Fear spread. Neighborhood WhatsApp groups were buzzing with theories, suspicions, and reports of strange noises at night. Tom, Rachel's boyfriend, was in despair. He searched social media, asked friends for help, and reviewed the last messages he had exchanged with Rachel. Nothing indicated any problems, threats, or disagreements. Her routine was predictable. Work, gym, home, walks. Rachel's cell phone was never found, nor were there any signs of banking or digital activity after her disappearance. The investigation deepened. Police checked vehicle registration records in the area, but the black vehicle appeared to be missing. No street cameras captured it leaving the neighborhood. Investigators found a pair of headphones identical to hers about a mile from Rachel's home, lying near a dead-end street. There were no signs of struggle, but male footprints were identified in the mud, mixed in with Rachel's footprints. DNA from the scene did not match any known suspects. The local press began to press for answers. Sensational headlines spoke of the Chorlton predator and the black car of terror. The neighborhood went on alert. Women stopped walking alone at night. Parents started picking up their children from school, and sales of security cameras soared. The police stepped up patrols, but found no new leads. Weeks passed. The case went cold, but the anguish remained. Tom continued the search on his own, putting up posters in neighboring neighborhoods, talking to ride-sharing drivers, and searching online forums about missing people. A lead came when a woman in a nearby neighborhood reported being followed by a similar black car, but managed to escape by ducking into a store. The driver was never identified. The neighborhood's routine changed forever. The park bench where Rachel used to sit was empty. The neighbors became suspicious of any strangers. Rachel's house remained closed, the lights off, the garden overgrown with weeds. The silence of the nights was now filled with fear and expectation. The case of Rachel Turner became one of Manchester's most mysterious and disturbing disappearances. Police kept the investigation open, revisiting old leads, but never found the body or any conclusive trace. The black car was never seen again, and the man in the hoodie remained a ghost in the collective imagination of the neighborhood. For many, Rachel's story is a grim reminder that danger can lurk even in the most familiar places. A simple evening walk, an innocent habit, can turn into a never-ending nightmare. Fear, once distant, now lives on the streets of Chorlton, and Rachel's absence is felt each night as the lights go out and the shadows lengthen. 3. The Detour on the Road. Southern Germany, September 2024. Javier and Marta, a 31-year-old Spanish couple, were on vacation, exploring medieval villages and bucolic landscapes along the famous romantic road. The plan was simple: drive slowly, stopping in small towns, enjoying local wines, and staying in charming guest houses. That afternoon, after a late lunch in Dinkelspool, they decided to head to Rothenburg ob der Tauber, where they had booked a room in a historic guest house. The GPS suggested a shortcut, promising to save 20 minutes. Without hesitation, Javier took the alternative route, excited about the possibility of arriving before sunset. The main road soon gave way to secondary roads, flanked by fields and woods. The sky was beginning to darken, and the cell phone signal disappeared. Marta, always cautious, commented on the low-traffic road, but Javier insisted, trusting in technology. The asphalt gave way to a dirt trail covered in leaves and branches, where all they could hear was the sound of tires and the rustling of the wind through the trees. The GPS recalculated the route, indicating sharp curves and impossible turns. When they tried to turn back, they realized they were stuck, deep ditches on both sides and vegetation blocking the way. Their discomfort turned to apprehension when, as they crossed a wooden bridge, they noticed fresh tire tracks and, further on, signs that other cars had tried to maneuver there. The sun disappeared behind the trees, and the forest grew denser. The couple began to argue, Marta suggesting waiting until dawn, Javier wanting to keep going. The GPS only indicated continue for 2 kilometers, but the road seemed increasingly hostile, with branches scraping the bodywork and shadows moving between the trees. The car stopped suddenly, stalled after hitting a fallen tree trunk. Javier got out to check the engine, leaving Marta inside, nervous. She saw figures among the trees and heard branches breaking. She called Javier, who came running back, pale, saying he had seen someone watching. They locked the doors and tried to call 911, but there was no signal. The silence was broken by knocking on the passenger side window. Marta screamed. Javier tried to start it, but the car just coughed and died. Outside, figures circled the car, their flashlights illuminating the interior. The couple stood still, listening to whispers and footsteps. Suddenly, the rear window shattered, and someone tried to force open the door. Javier got out, shouting to keep the attackers away, but was grabbed and dragged into the forest. Marta tried to follow him, but was stopped by another man, who restrained her and covered her mouth. Desperation took over. She struggled, scratched, bit, but was dragged into the darkness, her screams muffled by the wind and the distant sound of a car speeding away. The next morning, a farmer found the car abandoned on the dirt road. The doors were open, the interior ransacked, blood on the driver's seat and marks of a struggle on the ground. Footprints led into the forest, where sniffer dogs found pieces of torn clothing and one of Marta's earrings. The police were called and began an intensive search, but the forest was vast, full of trails and hiding places. Helicopters, drones, and volunteers searched the area for days, to no avail. The investigation revealed that the couple's GPS had been manipulated. Someone had changed the address of the inn, redirecting it to that remote road. The app's history showed that other vehicles had traveled the same route in the previous weeks, some of them also reporting strange situations: flat tires, sudden roadblocks, the presence of unknown people watching from a distance. Local residents have reported the disappearance of other travelers in recent years, always under similar circumstances. In an abandoned cabin a few kilometers away, the police found personal items belonging to various victims: backpacks, cell phones, documents, bloody clothes, and diaries with desperate notes. There were detailed maps of the region, with alternative routes and observation points. The fingerprints found belonged to a local man, already suspected of other crimes, but he was never located. Rumors spoke of a group that preyed on unsuspecting tourists, luring them with technological traps and knowing every trail and hiding place in the forest. The case of Javier and Marta gained international attention, becoming a symbol of the hidden dangers of traveling through isolated areas and the malicious use of technology to manipulate routes. GPS, a trusted tool for millions of travelers, became the perfect instrument for an ambush. The couple was never found, and those responsible remain unknown. The road was closed, but reports of cars being chased by strangers and mysterious lights continued to circulate among drivers in the region. For family and friends, all that was left was the emptiness and anguish of an unanswered disappearance. The case remains, to this day, a grim warning about how, in a simple detour on the road, fate can be sealed by invisible hands, and how blind trust in technology can open the door to nightmares. The story has been the subject of news reports, podcasts, and documentaries, always highlighting the feeling of insecurity that permeates travel through remote regions. The disappearance of Javier and Marta remains unsolved, and the fear, once distant, now haunts the back roads of Germany, where every curve could hide the next disappearance. Hey guys, the stories of people who have disappeared are spine-chilling, aren't they? If you're enjoying these suspenseful stories, take a quick break, subscribe to the channel, and leave a like. This really helps the channel grow and motivates me to continue bringing you more spine-chilling content. Now, let's get back to the next stories. There's still a lot of mystery ahead. 4. The App Meeting. Berlin, May 2023. On a Friday night, Julian Weber, 27, left his apartment in the Nuckel neighborhood for a date arranged through a popular dating app. He was a reserved young man, but had been trying to open up more after the end of a long-term relationship. The profile he had been chatting with for weeks was called Lena, a woman with an easy smile and similar interests: cinema, alternative music, and hidden cafes around the city. They exchanged messages and audio messages, and Lena suggested a discreet bar in a remote neighborhood known for being quiet and not very busy at night. Julian told a friend about the meeting, sent him his location, and left home shortly after 8 p.m. He took the subway, changed lines, and walked to the agreed-upon address, a narrow street surrounded by old buildings and closed shops. He stopped in front of the bar, but saw no one waiting. He sent a message and received a reply: "I'm coming, just wait outside." Security cameras on the street showed Julian looking at his cell phone, pacing back and forth, until a black car stops at the corner. He approaches the vehicle, has a quick conversation with the driver, and gets into the passenger seat. After that, there is no more footage. Julian never returned home that night. The friend who received his last message tried to contact him several times, but was unsuccessful. The next day, alarmed, he contacted the police. The search began immediately. Family and friends put up posters, posted appeals on social media, and lobbied authorities. Police reviewed CCTV footage, spoke to bar staff and taxi drivers, but no one recognized the black car or the driver. The investigation progressed when experts analyzed Lena's profile. They discovered that the phone number was a temporary number created through encrypted messaging apps. The photos were of a Spanish influencer, used without permission. The email address was linked to other fake profiles on dating apps, all created in the previous weeks. The police cross-referenced the data and found at least 3 similar cases. Young people who had arranged to meet Lena and then disappeared without a trace. The pattern was repeated. Long conversations, exchange of photos, invitations to a discreet location, disappearance after getting into an unknown car. In all cases, the profile was deactivated shortly after the disappearance. One of the victims, a French student, was last seen getting into a similar vehicle, also on a poorly lit street in Berlin. Police suspected a predator who used apps to lure victims, choosing vulnerable targets and manipulating information to avoid being tracked. Julian's family was plunged into despair. His mother, Anna, gave emotional interviews, asking for help and offering a reward. The case gained national attention, with reports in newspapers, TV shows, and investigative podcasts. Digital security experts warned about the risks of fake profiles and meeting strangers, while the police intensified the search and asked for the public's cooperation. Days later, a ride-hailing driver reported seeing Julian getting into the black car, describing the driver as a middle-aged man with a thin face, a thin beard, and light-colored eyes. The driver seemed nervous and avoided eye contact. Police followed the lead, but the car was never located. In an industrial area on the outskirts of the city, they found Julian's belongings, his wallet, watch, and cell phone, all dumped in a vacant lot. There was no sign of a struggle, but tire tracks and footprints suggested someone had tried to dispose of evidence. The investigation revealed that other recent disappearances in neighboring cities followed the same pattern. Lena's profile resurfaced under other names, luring victims to deserted streets, always with the same modus operandi. The police created a task force to identify the person responsible, but the predator always seemed one step ahead, changing numbers, IP addresses, and even cities. Julian's case has become a symbol of the hidden dangers of dating apps. The story has been the subject of documentaries, debates, and awareness campaigns, warning about the risks of trusting perfect profiles and meeting in isolated places. Fear has spread among young people who have started sharing routes, telling friends, and avoiding meeting in uncrowded areas. Julian's family never gave up. They organized vigils, pressured authorities, and kept the case alive in the media. Despite their efforts, the police never found the body or arrested the person responsible. The black car, the light-eyed driver, and the Lena profile became urban legends, fueling fears that the predator was still at large, lurking on dating apps, waiting for his next victim. Julian's disappearance remains one of Berlin's most disturbing cases, a reminder that behind a screen can lurk the worst of human dangers. A simple search for company, a chance encounter, can turn into a never-ending nightmare, and that in the connected world, risk can be just a click away. 5. The disappearance at the mall. Barcelona, March 2024. It was a busy Saturday at the Mare Magnum Shopping Center, one of the city's most popular spots, known for its modern architecture and prime seaside location. Among the hundreds of visitors was Lucas Fernandez, 15, accompanied by 3 friends from school. They planned to spend the afternoon playing arcade games, trying out snacks, and exploring the electronic stores. Lucas was outgoing but also distracted, often wandering away from the group to window shop or answer messages on his cell phone. Around 4 p.m., Lucas separated from his friends after agreeing to meet them at the cinema in half an hour. He said he was going to the food court to buy a milkshake. Security cameras show Lucas walking alone through the aisles, stopping in front of a sneaker store and then heading to the fast food area. At one point, an unknown middle-aged man with thinning hair and wearing a dark coat approaches Lucas. They talk for about 2 minutes. The man gestures, appears to be showing something on his cell phone, and then the two walk together toward a side exit of the mall. From that point on, Lucas disappears from the images. His friends, worried about his delay, try to call him, but his cell phone is turned off. They search stores, bathrooms, and hallways, without success. After an hour, they notify the security guards and then Lucas's family. The police are called that night, and the mall is searched until closing, with no sign of the teenager. The investigation begins immediately. Lucas's family, desperate, releases photos and makes appeals on social media. The police analyze the camera footage and identify the unknown man, but are unable to accurately trace his face. He avoids well-lit areas and keeps his hood up most of the time. Witnesses remember seeing Lucas talking to the man, but no one hears the conversation or notices any sign of threat. In the following days, the police released the video of the encounter and asked the public for information. Dozens of clues emerged, but none led to Lucas's whereabouts. The investigation revealed that, in the previous weeks, 2 other teenagers had reported strange approaches from a man with a similar profile, always in shopping malls or subway stations. In both cases, the man tried to convince the young people to accompany him to see a gift or help find a friend, but they refused and walked away. Lucas's family is plunged into despair. His mother, Teresa, gives emotional interviews, while his father, Miguel, organizes voluntary searches in the city and surrounding areas. Posters with Lucas's face are displayed throughout Barcelona. The case gains national attention, and the police create a task force to investigate the disappearances of teenagers in public places. A week later, Lucas's cell phone is found in a park 10 kilometers from the mall, with the battery removed. There are no signs of a struggle, but nearby footprints indicate that someone had been there recently. The police also find a cap identical to the one Lucas was wearing, partially buried in the damp earth. Sniffer dogs follow the trail to a highway, where the tracks disappear. The investigation reveals that the mysterious man used false identities and changed his appearance frequently. He was seen in different shopping malls and stations in Barcelona, often watching unaccompanied teenagers. There were no records of vehicles in the shopping mall area at the time of his disappearance, suggesting that he used public transport or walking routes to avoid being tracked. Lucas's case sparks fear and paranoia among parents and young people in the city. Schools hold talks on safety, and community watch groups are created. The police increase their presence in shopping malls and other high-traffic areas, but the man is never identified. New reports of suspicious approaches emerge in neighboring cities, but no concrete conclusion is reached. The Fernandez family never gives up. They organize vigils, keep the case alive in the media, and pressure the authorities for answers. Lucas's disappearance becomes a symbol of the hidden risks in public spaces, where constant surveillance is no guarantee of safety. The Maremagnum shopping mall, once synonymous with leisure, is now viewed with suspicion and fear. The case remains open, fueling theories and urban legends about predators who prey on the distraction and vulnerability of young people in big cities. For many, Lucas's story is a painful reminder that in a crowd, danger can be just a hallway away, and that a simple misunderstanding can turn into a never-ending nightmare. In the months that followed, the local community came together to create support groups for the families of the missing, promoting awareness and safety campaigns. Police stepped up surveillance in public areas, installing additional cameras and increasing night patrols. Despite this, the man was never captured, and the mystery remains. Criminology experts analyzed the case, highlighting the sophistication of the predator, who used psychological manipulation techniques to lure his victims and disappear without a trace. Lucas' story inspired changes in public safety policies and protocols for responding to disappearances, but it also left a deep mark on the population, which began to approach encounters and movements in public places with greater caution. For the Fernandez family, the lack of answers is an open wound, but the hope for justice and Lucas' memory remain alive. The story, based on real events, is a grim warning about the dangers that can lurk in the midst of everyday life, reminding us that safety can never be taken for granted, even in the most familiar places. In the days that followed, police received numerous reports from residents who reported seeing the mysterious man roaming other areas of the city, always acting cautiously and avoiding identification. Authorities began to suspect that he was part of a larger network specializing in kidnappings and disappearances, which operated in several European cities. 6. Temporary work. Rural Scotland, summer 2023. Sophia, a 22-year-old Spanish university student, has taken a temporary job on a remote farm to help with the summer harvest and save money for a trip. The farm, located dozens of miles from the nearest town, was famous for its organic produce, but also for its remote location, surrounded by hills, forests, and winding dirt roads. The advert promised accommodation, food, and a good salary. It seemed like the perfect opportunity for someone looking for peace and quiet and a different experience. In the early days, Sophia adapted to the grueling routine, waking up before the sun, working in the changeable Scottish weather, living with a few colleagues, and being closely supervised by the owner, Angus, a middle-aged man with a cold gaze and a sharp voice. The farm was large, with vast fields, old sheds, and a main house where Angus and his wife, Margaret, lived, who was rarely seen. Despite the initial cordiality, Sophia soon realized that something was wrong. The other temporary workers were reserved, avoided conversation, and always seemed tense. Whispered rumors spoke of workers who had mysteriously disappeared in recent months, but no one dared to discuss the matter openly. At night, strange sounds echoed across the fields, shuffling footsteps, indistinct whispers, doors creaking in the wind. The workers' accommodation was simple, with shared rooms, hidden cameras in the hallways, and reinforced locks on the windows. Cell phone reception was almost non-existent, making any attempt to communicate with the outside world impossible. Sophia felt watched, as if someone was always one step ahead, planning her every move. The atmosphere on the farm was oppressive, with the sky often obscured by dark clouds that seemed to reflect the workers' fear. During her breaks, Sophia tried to talk to her co-workers about the disappearances, but she received suspicious looks and warnings not to get into trouble. Tom, one of the oldest workers, confided that he had tried to escape months earlier, but had been caught and threatened. According to him, the farm was a trap, a place that no one left without Angus's permission. Sophia began to suspect that Angus had accomplices, people who helped keep the workers under control and disappeared anyone who dared to break the rules. Angus's behavior was becoming increasingly disturbing. He would watch the workers from afar, appearing suddenly in the fields or sheds, always on the lookout for any sign of insubordination. Sophia noticed that the lights in the main house were flickering irregularly, as if someone was manipulating the electrical system to create an atmosphere of fear. One rainy night, she found a secret passage behind a bookcase in the shed, which led to a dark, damp basement. There she saw clothes, documents, and personal items belonging to people she had never met, the belongings of missing people. The psychological tension was constant. Sophia began leaving hidden messages and objects, hoping that someone would find them and help. Her fear grew when she realized that the hidden cameras were connected to a remote monitoring system, allowing Angus and his accomplices to observe everything in real time. Each night, her sleep was interrupted by muffled screams coming from the warehouse or the sound of doors being forced shut. In the last week of her contract, Sophia decided to escape. She planned carefully. She would wait for Angus to leave for the city, grab some supplies, and escape through the fields, following the trail from the creek to the main road. However, when she tried to carry out her plan, she was surprised by voices and footsteps approaching. She was captured and taken to an isolated warehouse, where she found belongings from other victims, backpacks, cell phones, wallets, and diaries with desperate notes. Angus threatened her, saying that no one would ever find out what was happening there. Days later, Sophia's family reported her missing. The police began searching the farm and discovered that other workers had also disappeared. They found tampered records, destroyed evidence, and evidence that Angus had a sophisticated surveillance system in place to intimidate and control workers. The local community, mobilized by fear and outrage, organized searches and protests. Residents told stories of young people who had never returned home after working on the farm. The farm was surrounded, but Angus disappeared before the authorities arrived. His wife, Margaret, claimed to know nothing and was released after questioning. The case gained international attention, inspiring reports, documentaries, and debates about the vulnerability of temporary workers in isolated places. The farm, now abandoned, is avoided by locals and tourists, who tell dark stories about what happened there. The silence of the fields hides secrets that may never be revealed, and Angus's shadow still haunts the region. Sophia, despite her disappearance, has become a symbol of resistance and courage for those who fight against exploitation and abuse. Her story is told in awareness campaigns, lectures, and events on labor rights. The case served as a warning to travelers and workers about the dangers of accepting jobs in isolated places without knowing the history of the place in depth. For Sophia's family, what remains is the pain of absence and the hope that one day the truth will come to light, and that, behind the peaceful facade of a farm, the worst of the horrors never hide. 7. The party at the new house. Munich, Germany, November 2023. A group of 8 college students decided to celebrate one of their birthdays by renting a recently renovated house on the outskirts of the city, in a remote neighborhood surrounded by vacant lots and few inhabited houses. The listing promised space, privacy, and modern decor, perfect for a night of partying away from the prying eyes of their neighbors. The reservation was made through a popular app, and the hostess, who identified herself only as Frau Lenz, left access instructions and said that she would not be able to attend, but that she wished them a pleasant stay. The night started off lively. Loud music, games, drinks, laughter, and videos recorded for social media. The group spread out through the rooms, exploring the house and taking photos in every corner. Around 3 in the morning, some guests began to leave, while 5 remained, among them the birthday boy's closest friends. The atmosphere was relaxed, but as the night went on, small details began to bother them. Doors that creaked by themselves, lights that flickered, and the feeling that someone was watching the house from outside. Just before dawn, 3 members of the group, Lucas, Anna, and Felix, went outside to smoke and never returned. The other 2, tired and already a bit agitated, thought their friends had decided to leave early or were just hanging out outside. As the sun began to rise, they noticed that the house was strangely quiet. When they looked for their friends, they found no one. The rooms were empty. The missing people's cell phones were lying on the living room table, and their backpacks were open, as if they had been hastily searched. The scene inside the house was disturbing. Bloodstains in the hallway, a broken chair, knocked over glasses, and personal documents scattered across the floor. The curtains were torn, and one of the back doors remained open, swinging in the cold morning wind. The remaining group tried to call the police, but their cell phones had no signal. The house's Wi-Fi, which had worked normally overnight, was now down. Desperate, the 2 remaining young men ran into the street to seek help. They were found by a couple of neighbors, who immediately called the authorities. The police arrived quickly and sealed off the house, beginning a thorough investigation. Officers found clear signs of a struggle: muddy boot prints in the hallway, strands of hair caught in a doorknob, and drag marks leading to the backyard, where the grass was flattened and there were fragments of torn fabric. Security cameras on the street captured images of a black car parked near the house at around 4 a.m. 2 masked men were seen entering through the side door and leaving minutes later, carrying large bags. None of the neighbors recognized the vehicle or the suspects. The hostess, Frau Lenz, was never located. The profile used for the rental was a fake, with stolen documents and erased digital traces. The investigation revealed that in the previous months, other groups had reported strange situations in rented houses in the same area. Guests who disappeared, signs of a break-in, personal belongings missing. In all cases, contact was made through anonymous profiles and payment was demanded through untraceable transfers. The police suspected a gang specialized in kidnapping and extortion, which used rented houses to lure young, isolated, and vulnerable victims. Local and national media followed the case closely. Family members and friends of the missing people organized searches, vigils, and social media campaigns. The neighborhood, previously considered peaceful, became paranoid. Residents became suspicious of strangers, installed cameras, and reinforced security. The party house was sealed off and remains empty, with residents reporting hearing noises at night and seeing figures in the windows. The investigation dragged on for months, but the 3 young men were never found. The case became a symbol of modern fears about app-based rentals and parties in unknown locations. Similar reports emerged in other cities in Germany and Europe, revealing a pattern of sophisticated crimes using technology to manipulate identities, block communications, and disappear without a trace. For the survivors, the experience left deep trauma. One of them developed panic syndrome, the other moved to another city and cut off contact with old friends. The once close-knit group of college students fell apart under the weight of mystery and guilt. The story of the party at the new house is told in lectures on digital security and in documentaries about disappearances in the age of social media. The case remains open, fueling theories and urban legends about gangs that prey on young people at parties. using rented houses as perfect traps. For many, it is a grim warning. The promise of fun and freedom can hide unimaginable dangers, and sometimes the biggest mistake is to trust the anonymity of an online profile and the false security of an unknown home. And so we come to the end of our 7 horror stories involving people who disappeared and never came back. So, which one scared you the most? Will any of them make you think twice before venturing out alone? Tell us in the comments which was your favorite. If you enjoyed this dive into the darker side of disappearances, don't forget to leave a like. This really helps the channel grow and encourages me to bring you more spine-chilling stories. And if you're not a subscriber yet, take advantage now to subscribe and activate the bell.